congrats on this movie.
Thank
You
you.
guys are
Thank
both,
you.
well, I love it both of you are willing to do these really courageous, wild roles and give it your all. Where's that come from in each of you? Just that drive to put yourself out there and not be afraid of things like this.
Ooh. Well, I'll say this: like, it really helps when you have people like Drew Hancock, who's
Yes.
writing and directing.
Yes.
There's something. I think he used to act a bit. That's what you were saying yesterday. And
Yeah, he knows how to talk to actors and give them confidence and freedom as well, which I think is really important.
There's an empathy there towards what we do, and when you have that safety net there, it's really easy to jump. You know, it doesn't feel. It feels scary, but he gives you the confidence.
Yeah.
It feels like you're jumping with him, and that feels really great.
Yeah, and movies like this are so cathartic to me. It feels like a release, and anytime I get to be emotional on screen, it feels like a release that I always needed.
Yeah.
On those days when it's really probably cathartic, when it's full on, are those the most challenging days? Or are they the most rewarding days? Is it both?
Both.
Both, yeah. I find I love crying more than anything, and that's why I'm doing all these movies. But I guess I don't really have that in Companion, but Heretic, Yellow Jackets. But it just feels like therapeutic in a strange way.
Yeah, no, it can be tough, but then at the end of the day, you're just like, I don't know, you've released
so much,
It's really
and you
nice.
sleep so well after scenes like that.
Sure. But you're also taking the audience on that same journey, and they're going through those same feelings. If your work, which is done here, is done well. So how much of that do you think about when, is it after the film, or do you see that right on the page, how you're going to bring that to life? What stage?
in terms of the crowd's
reaction to certain
I
things.
try
what
to
you're trying
disconnect
convey.
myself
too.
from thinking about the audience because then
Yeah.
it gets too technical and it gets too heady.
I get too self-conscious.
Yeah.
I have this thing I say before I start every project. I say it to myself, like for the first week of shooting, I will literally say to myself, this is a student film, and the only people who will see this are our friends. I have to use delusion on myself.
Absolutely.
Because if I start thinking of the amount of eyeballs something could potentially have, it just makes for not good work at the end of the day. Yeah.
But as both of your profiles have been raised over the last couple years, and movies like this are so well done, and there are people already saying such great things about it, at this point now that it's done, do you let yourself think about all the eyeballs and all the reaction and
That's
what that means to you?
I'm trying not to. I'm
to.
really trying not to. And it's interesting because shooting this, it really felt so intimate. And there was a beauty to that because it allowed for freedom and it allowed for us to take chances without being too scared of, people controlling us in a sense. But now it's interesting just seeing the posters around and having press days like this when it felt so small and like we were just a family.
Yeah.
That's been kind of my thing every time I've done a project. It's happened to me before, but it always feels new every time, which is you have this thing, again, student film, only people who will see this are our friends.
I love that.
And you become, there's a little bit of once you put any art into the world, it's no longer yours anymore, and there's a little bit of it's a little melancholic, but it's really cool at the same time, especially if people are enjoying it. That's always a very surreal process for me of like, it's no longer just ours, it's everybody else's. But that's just kind of the way it goes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Taking on this character, what that was like for you in terms of, I know you put so much work into this and the language stuff, and I was talking to other actors.
Yeah, it was the language.
But how impressed your colleagues are with your performance, even in watching you. Just what that was like for you, investing so much energy into this, and how rewarding that was for you, and how much you love this woman, else you wouldn't have brought her to life.
I love her so much and immediately resonated with her from the beginning. Just me in relationships, I've been there before, and I've been that anxious and that insecure, so that was really easy to tap into. But then I also grew with her as we were filming this. I felt I had also done Heretic in between our 6-month strike, so I came in a little bit more confident, and I think that was interesting psychologically to have that break and then come in being like, okay, I'm really warmed up. I can do this, and I think that was great. But I tried not to let it get too technical, because I'm getting a lot of technical questions, but I wanted it to feel, I wanted to be so focused on her emotions, and the physicality of it all is very technical, but I wanted it to feel so human and like she has so much empathy and warmth.
And those small human moments, those little things you do.
I don't think I'm even aware of a lot of it too, which is strange.
The subtle stuff is done so well.
Yeah, there's a smoothness to her that I'm not as used to, I think. Whereas a character like Natalie's the opposite of smooth.
Sure.
And it doesn't feel like me either. The smoothness of it all was maybe the hardest part, where I had to just be very in tune with my body.
And living with this guy. What that was like for you.
My character?
Yeah.
I mean, Josh is... I think what's so fascinating about him is that he's the antagonist of this movie. I think a lot of... a lesser version of this movie would have had him as the protagonist, and Iris is on a rampage. Josh has to stop her.
Sure.
But what I like is that he's a villain who doesn't know he's a villain, and it feels like a guy you could actually meet, which is a really scary thing.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Finding empathy towards him was difficult at first, but I eventually just kind of stumbled on. I think he's a guy who has not heard the words "I love you" in his life, and I think that gave me a bit of empathy towards him, because he's just a very lonely, insecure person who has this void inside of him, and he's trying to get along, he thinks he's the hero of his own story. I mean, incorrectly, but I use a lot of delusion there. I'd watch John Cusack movies from the 80s because that's who I think Josh thinks he is.
Okay.
So there's a lot of layers there, but Drew and the whole cast, the whole crew were so helpful and wonderful, and it's just a great experience shooting this movie. It really was.
What kind of conversations do you hope couples, audiences come out and talk about in terms of relationships, in terms of love, in terms of actual serious things that are going on in this film?
Yeah.
People, hopefully, it'll resonate with them.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about relationships, and it says a lot about toxic dynamics and one-sided relationships, which so many people are in without even realizing.
Yeah.
And most of the time, you don't realize it until later on. So I think maybe this movie could be a slap in the face to some extent.
For sure.
But just about relationships, though, there's so much more to be said.
Of course.
In this movie about misogyny, about
Yeah.
finding control as a woman when you feel like you don't have control.
That's
We were
what's so
joking
fun.
yesterday, if you can, if you leave this movie with your date and you just ask them, who do you think the main character was?
That could do it.
And they say
Yeah, and it
Josh,
should be a simple...
run.
Yeah.
Run.
Nice. And lastly, just bringing your musical talents to your film projects, and how great it is to have that kind of crossover in this film specifically, but also in general, what that's like for you as a artist.
This one was so fun because I feel like even the humming and her theme song really brings you into her headspace, and it feels cathartic for her, and it feels like it centers her as well. But I think it ties the movie together. I'd mentioned Rosemary's Baby, and I think that just added to an eeriness and a romantic feeling that we needed at the beginning, and to tie her in such dark moments. It's such a stark contrast that I think really it played well.